I think a lot of people wake up one day and realize their life doesn't feel the way they thought it would. Not because they failed, not because they made terrible decisions, but because life changes while you're busy trying to hold everything together. Welcome to Have I Got Something to Say? I'm your host, Roberta Zambelli. Let's get into it. Before we start, if you've been listening and these episodes are helping you, make sure you're following the podcast on Apple or Spotify so you don't miss new episodes. And you can also subscribe on Substack. And if this episode resonates with you, send it to someone who might need to hear it too. I think a lot of people wake up one day and realize their life doesn't feel the way they thought it would. Not because they failed, not because they made terrible decisions, but because life changes while you're busy trying to hold everything together. You grow up, you go to college, you build relationships, you get married, you have kids, you work, you pay bills, you try to be responsible, you try to create stability, and for 20 or 25 years, sometimes longer, your life becomes about everybody else. You become the best partner you can be, the best parent you can be, the best employee you can be, the person everybody depends on, the person everybody calls, the person making sure everything gets done. And somewhere in the middle of all that, you slowly stop prioritizing yourself. Sometimes the sadness isn't because life got worse. Sometimes it's because you realize how long you stopped prioritizing yourself. And that's a hard realization. Because maybe the relationship changes. Maybe it ends. Maybe the kids grow up and move out. Maybe the routines you lived for 20 years suddenly disappear. Maybe the house gets quiet in a way that almost feels uncomfortable at first. And then you're sitting there thinking, now what? Because everything that filled your days, your time, your attention, your energy, it changed. And when those changes first happen, I think a lot of people panic a little bit because they think, this is it. My best years are gone. Everything is over. And I think a lot of women secretly feel like time is running out in midlife. I remember feeling that way too. Like somehow they missed it. Like life already happened and now they're just supposed to settle into what's ever left. And honestly, I don't believe that at all. Because your best years are not gone. They may actually be starting. Because for the first time in years, you finally get to ask yourself what you want. Not what everybody else wants. Not what works best for everyone else. Not what everybody expects from you. You. And honestly, I think that's terrifying for some people because they don't even know anymore. You spend so many years surviving and taking care of everything that you stop asking yourself basic questions. What makes me happy? What kind of life do I want now? How do I actually want to spend my time? What brings me peace? What excites me? What kind of people do I want around me? And if you're listening to this right now and realizing you haven't asked yourself what you want in years, you are not alone. You realized that for years you were functioning, but maybe you weren't really living intentionally anymore. And I'm not saying your old life didn't matter. It mattered. Those memories matter. The relationships mattered. Raising your kids mattered. Holding everything together mattered. Reinvention doesn't mean rejecting your old life. All of those experiences, whether they were beautiful or painful, shaped you into the person you are now. But maybe now there's another version of you trying to emerge. And maybe this next phase of life is about finally paying attention to her. I think when people hear starting over or reinventing yourself, they think it means blowing up your life and becoming a completely different person overnight. No, that's not real life. It happens slowly. Sometimes it takes 6 months. Sometimes it takes years. Sometimes you spend a long time grieving the version of life you thought you were going to have before you can fully embrace the one that's in front of you now. And that's normal. But eventually, if you allow yourself to grow instead of staying stuck, something shifts. You stop waking up feeling hopeless. You stop focusing only on what you lost. And you start getting excited about possibilities again. You start realizing maybe you do want to take better care of yourself. Maybe you do want peace instead of chaos. Maybe you want to get healthier, stronger, calmer. Maybe you finally want to decorate your home the way you want it. Maybe you want to travel. Maybe you want to create something. Maybe you want a different career. Maybe you want to start a side business. Maybe you just want mornings that feel peaceful instead of stressful. And honestly, there is nothing wrong with that. You earned that right. You spent years giving your time, your energy, your compassion, your patience, your care, your attention to everybody else. Now you finally get to give some of that back to yourself. And I think one of the biggest shifts that happens in midlife is realizing that calmness is actually valuable. When you're younger, you think you always need noise, people, activity, chaos, something happening all the time, because otherwise you feel like you're missing out. But when you get older, you realize peace is underrated. You realize not every moment has to be filled. You realize you actually enjoy your own space. You enjoy your routines. You enjoy protecting your energy. And no, that doesn't mean you stop living. Actually, I think it's the opposite. I think you start living more intentionally. You stop rushing. You stop forcing. You stop chasing things that no longer fit who you are. And maybe for the first time in years, you actually start becoming yourself again. And I really want women to understand this part. Just because one phase of your life ended does not mean your life ended. It changed. That's different. And yes, change is uncomfortable, sometimes heartbreaking, sometimes lonely, sometimes confusing. But it also creates space. Space to think. Space to breathe. Space to rediscover yourself. Space to finally ask yourself what kind of life you want moving forward. At first, the silence feels heavy. And then one day, unexpectedly, it starts feeling peaceful. And there is no rush. There is no finish line. You don't have to answer everything right now. You don't have to reinvent yourself in 6 months. You don't have to prove anything to anybody. Just start paying attention to yourself again. Start listening to yourself again. Start allowing yourself to want things again. Because eventually, when you start living more intentionally, you wake up differently. You stop waking up dreading life. You stop waking up feeling stuck. And you start waking up excited about possibilities again. And that's when you realize your life didn't shrink. It opened. That's a beautiful feeling. That's when you know you've started coming through the other side of it. So enjoy it. Embrace it. You deserve it. Your life didn't end. It changed. And maybe now, for the first time in a very long time, you finally get to decide what comes next. If this episode resonated with you, make sure you're following the podcast on Apple or Spotify so you don't miss new episodes. And you can also subscribe on Substack. And if you know someone who needs to hear this right now, send this episode to them. And remember, you're good.